The first thing they yelled was, "Federal Sheriff, step out with your hands up. This is the HOA police." I looked up from my coffee, blinked once, and sighed. The second thing was my front door exploding inward. 4 people in tactical vests poured into my living room, boots crunching on the remains of my perfectly innocent deadbolt. Their vests read, "Cedar Crest HOA Police." One had a paintball mask. Another had a plastic duty belt from some mall cop catalog. They swept the room, shouting, "Clear!" at my IKEA furniture. The lead woman, helmet and mirrored sunglasses inside, vest labeled Commander E. Russell, pointed a finger at me. "You are under HOA investigation for repeated covenant violations, failure to submit to inspection, and refusal to comply with lawful community directives." I was still in sweatpants, and I calmly set my mug down. "You know what's wild," I said, "is that 2 of those words mean something in court, and none of them apply to you." She snapped at me with an angry tone, "Get on the ground or we'll escalate." I stood instead. And that was the moment 3 things happened almost at once. My phone buzzed with a text, "ETA 1 minute, hear sirens? Carter." The faint wail of real police sirens drifted in from down the block. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet, flipping it open with a practiced motion. The laminated ID and badge gleamed. United States Marshal Service, Federal Fugitive Task Force, Deputy Marshal Marcus Hale. I looked at Commander E. Russell over the top of the badge and said, conversationally, "Since you're pretending to be cops, we should talk about the part where I'm actually the federal sheriff in this county." Her sunglasses finally slipped down her nose. "I'm the kind of man HOAs love to misread. Early 40s, kept my lawn neat, kept my truck washed, waved politely, didn't gossip. Worked weird hours, sometimes left before dawn, sometimes came home at midnight. To the neighbors, I was the IT guy, or maybe something with cybersecurity. Only a few people knew the truth. I was a Deputy United States Marshal assigned as the liaison to local law enforcement, what most of the sheriff's offices jokingly called the federal sheriff. When the real monsters needed chasing across state lines, I was the one they called. But at home, in Cedar Crest Meadows, I just wanted peace, a functioning grill, and nobody bothering me about the shade of beige on my garage door. I hadn't wanted an HOA at all. My wife had convinced me. "It's mild," she'd said. "Just keeps people from parking boats in the street. No big deal." Then came Elaine Russell, elected HOA president 6 months after we moved in. Elaine treated Cedar Crest Meadows like her own micronation. Late 40s, severe bob, permanently clenched jaw, a wardrobe built entirely around khakis and polo shirts embroidered with the HOA logo. She referred to the CC and RS as our Constitution, and to herself as Chief of Community Operations. The brochures had promised light enforcement. Elaine had promised herself a kingdom. It started with the truck. I kept a government-issued black Tahoe in my driveway, plain but unmistakably law enforcement adjacent. No decals, but the push bar and spotlight gave it away. One morning, I found a notice tucked under the wiper. Commercial/work vehicle prohibited. 48 hours TO remove or face fines. I emailed the HOA. "Hi, this is a government fleet vehicle, not commercial. It's assigned to me and authorized for home parking. Marcus Hale." Elaine replied in bold red font, "The board does not recognize any special status of your vehicle. Our community has policies." I put the notice in a folder labeled HOA Nonsense, because that's what law enforcement taught you. Document the crazy early. Next came the security cameras. I installed 2 small, plainly visible cameras, one over the garage, one watching the front door. Elaine knocked on my door within 48 hours. "These are not on the approved aesthetic list," she said with a stern tone. "I'm in federal law enforcement," I answered. "I don't really do approved aesthetic lists." She bristled. "We have our own enforcement arm, Mr. Hale. You don't get to intimidate the neighborhood with military-grade surveillance." "They're Arlos," I said. "They send me videos of raccoons stealing my trash." She left a week later with a formal camera removal demand. Then came the emails. Complaints about my tactical footwear on the porch. Warnings that my hours were suspicious. A board memo circulating rumors that I was playing cop. I stayed calm, kept copies, and never once mentioned what my badge actually said. The final straw for Elaine came during a board meeting I hadn't even attended. The treasurer mentioned they were struggling to enforce parking and trash violations. We could hire security, someone mused. Elaine's eyes gleamed with religious fervor. Or, she said, we could form our own HOA police department. And just like that, suburban delusion went tactical. Within a month, Elaine had created something she grandly called the Cedar Crest Community Enforcement Division. She bought used black Explorers and slapped HOA patrol magnets on the doors. She ordered uniforms with generic badges that read, Community Officer. She printed fake incident forms that looked suspiciously like police reports. They started small, cruising slowly down the streets, shining spotlights at trash cans, tapping on car windows to educate people about parking distances from fire hydrants. Neighbors laughed it off at first. Then officers started demanding IDs from teenagers walking home. Then they started telling Amazon drivers where they could and couldn't park. Then they tried to stop a real cop. One evening, a city officer came to visit a friend in the subdivision. An HOA patrol SUV pulled up behind him, lights flashing those cheap amber and white strobes. Elaine herself stepped out, vest puffed, and told him with a commanding tone, "You can't park here. HOA enforcement is in progress." The officer told her, very politely, where she could put her enforcement. Elaine marched home furious and wrote a 2,000-word email titled, Unaccountable Outside Police Presence in Our Community. In it, she announced that from now on, all law enforcement contact in Cedar Crest should go through her. I read that 3 times. My wife, also in federal law enforcement, looked up from her cereal and said, "Is she trying to nationalize the cul-de-sac?" I smiled faintly. Let her keep talking. The First Amendment is about to gift-wrap us probable cause. 2 weeks later, we got a letter marked Final Notice, Forced Inspection. Due to repeated non-compliance, the HOA Enforcement Division will be conducting an internal inspection of your property on Friday between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. to document violations. Failure to unlock and open your home for inspection will be treated as obstruction. I showed it to my United States attorney contact. "Is this a joke?" the prosecutor asked. "Not yet," I said. "But it's about to be Exhibit A." We quietly opened a federal investigation into impersonation of law enforcement, extortion, and deprivation of rights under color of authority. Elaine had no idea. She just saw that I didn't respond. So she decided to make an example. And that's how she scheduled the raid. Elaine didn't call it a raid, of course. She called it an unannounced Tier 3 compliance action. She prepared like she was storming a cartel compound, printed warrants signed by herself, bought cheap RAM tools from the internet, briefed her 4 most enthusiastic officers in the clubhouse. Her private PowerPoint, later seized in a search, had slides titled, Objective, Restore Respect for HOA Authority. Target, the Hale residents, Chronic Non-Compliance, Hostile Attitude. Rules of Engagement, Firm, Commanding, Zero Tolerance. She even assigned call signs. When Friday came, I was at my kitchen table sipping coffee, my badge and sidearm secured in my office safe. I'd been told to stay calm, not escalate, and definitely not shoot anyone in a polo shirt with a fake badge unless my life was truly in danger. Outside, the HOA SWAT stacked up at my front door like they'd watched one too many reality shows. "HOA police. Open up for inspection," they shouted. I didn't. The Ram slammed the door open. They flooded in, yelling orders, knocking a framed photo off the wall. They went room to room, stomping on rugs, opening cabinets, snapping pictures with their phones. Incomplete window treatments. Non-approved shelving in garage. Unregistered grill model. One of them swept an arm across my workbench in the garage, sending carefully sorted tools clattering to the floor for safety. Another started bagging my wood stain and paint cans as hazardous substances. All of this, Elaine said, breathing hard with adrenaline, is evidence of a hostile, non-compliant household. We can seize for review. I watched my toolbox hit the ground and decided that was enough footage. I calmly stepped into the hall, pulled out my phone, and spoke just loud enough for my Bluetooth to pick it up. "Hey, Carter?" "Yeah." "They're in. Breached the door. Trashing the place. You've got the cameras. Time to knock. Right on cue, sirens. Real ones. 4 city patrol cars, 1 county sheriff's SUV, and because someone in dispatch had a sense of humor, a black Suburban from the United States Marshal's local office rolled up to Cedar Crest like the world's politest invasion. Outside, neighbors poured onto their lawns, phones out. Inside, Elaine was lecturing me about respecting law and order when Officer Carter appeared in the wrecked doorway, hand on his holstered weapon. "HOA police." Elaine shouted triumphantly. "We've already taken control of this scene." Carter stared. Then his gaze slid to me. "You good, Marshal?" he asked. The word hung in the air like a dropped plate. I finally held up my badge, this time for everyone to see. "Deputy United States Marshal Marcus Hale," I said, voice gone official. "This residence is a federal law enforcement officer's home. These individuals forced entry without consent, seized property, and have been impersonating police." One of the HOA officers audibly gulped. Carter turned to Elaine. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "I need you and your team to put your hands where I can see them." "You can't arrest us," Elaine shrieked. "We're enforcement. We have jurisdiction." "You've got magnets on your SU Versus," Carter said. "That's not jurisdiction." The Marshal Suburban's driver stepped in behind him. "We've been building a case on your little cosplay department for weeks," he added. "Today just made it very, very easy." The HOA police were marched out in a line, past their stunned neighbors, Miranda rights echoing off tasteful stucco. For once, Elaine had an audience and nothing to say. The fallout came faster than a code enforcement letter after Christmas lights. The story hit local news within 24 hours. Fake HOA police arrested. Feds say suburban cop squad broke into officer's home. They ran the body cam footage of Elaine shouting, "HOA police, we have authority here," while standing in front of my very real badge. Within a week, the state attorney general announced charges: impersonating law enforcement, second-degree burglary, unlawful restraint, and a nice sprinkling of conspiracy. The United States Attorney's Office added federal counts: deprivation of rights under color of law and interference with a federal officer. The insurance company for Cedar Crest Meadows promptly freaked out and froze coverage pending a catastrophic governance review. The board held an emergency meeting without Elaine, mostly because she was out on bail with a condition that she not set foot on HOA property except her own driveway. I was there in plain clothes, arms folded, quietly watching. The remaining board members looked like they'd aged 10 years in 10 days. The vice president cleared his throat. "Apparently," he said, "we were not allowed to have a police department." Someone in the back muttered, "No kidding, Steve." The treasurer announced that all fines collected by the HOA Police Division, often under threats of arrest or home inspection, were being flagged as potentially unlawful and would likely have to be refunded. "That's almost $120,000, he said weakly. A neighbor raised her hand. "So my son got written up by Elaine's fake cops for playing basketball in the street. Does that count as trauma or just stupidity?" "The United States Attorney is very interested in that," I said. I hadn't planned to speak, but the room turned toward me like I was suddenly the reasonable adult in charge, which technically I was. "Let me make this simple," I said. HOAs are not governments. You can't create a police force, issue fake warrants, or break into homes. You especially can't do that to a federal officer and then yell jurisdiction at the actual cops. "So what happens now?" someone asked. I shrugged. "Elaine and her squad roll the dice in court. The rest of you hire real legal counsel, cooperate fully, and pray the judge thinks you were just gullible, not complicit." As if summoned by my words, my phone buzzed with a text from the United States Attorney. Indictments filed. 14 counts for Elaine, 8 each for her officers. Tell your neighbors not to shred anything. At Elaine's arraignment, The judge read out the charges while she stood in the same beige blazer she wore to HOA meetings. When he got to impersonating a federal officer, she flinched visibly. When he read the part about knowingly raiding the residence of a deputy United States Marshal, the courtroom gallery, packed with Cedar Crest residents, collectively inhaled. Her attorney tried the "we were just overzealous volunteers" defense. The prosecutor simply played a short video clip of her bellowing, "HOA police. We have more authority here than the city cops." It did not help. The HOA's former officers eventually accepted plea deals: probation, restitution, bans from any security-related employment, and mandatory community service. Elaine held out longer, convinced a jury of real Americans would see her as a hero. They saw the body cam footage instead. She was convicted on enough counts to make her HOA career a historical footnote. Her sentence wasn't dramatic TV prison, more like a carefully calibrated, absolutely humiliating correction. 18 months in a minimum security facility. 5 years of probation. A lifetime prohibition from serving on any board, council, or governance body. Mandatory training on civil rights and abuse of authority. Oh, and one extra condition suggested by the United States Attorney, which the judge approved with a tiny smile. For the duration of her probation, Miss Russell shall perform community service in coordination with the County Sheriff's Department, including custodial tasks at the courthouse and sheriff's office, under supervision. In other words, she got to scrub the floors of the people she'd tried to outrank. When the judge finished reading the sentence, Elaine's face went completely white. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Your Honor," she finally whispered, "I was just trying to maintain community standards." The judge looked at her over his reading glasses and said, "Miss Russell, you broke into a federal officer's home with fake police. Community standards didn't authorize that." She sat down hard, her beige blazer crumpling, and for the first time since I'd known her, Elaine Russell had absolutely nothing to say.